Greetings, I'm Professor K, and in this short video presentation we're going to take a look at how we go about creating a virtual install of CSI Linux using VirtualBox. The requirements for this install include a CSI Linux VirtualBox image, the installation of VirtualBox, a CPU that supports virtualization, 16 gigabytes of RAM is preferred, 8 gigabytes of RAM will suffice but would not be optimal, and at least 60 gigabytes of free hard drive space. This presentation assumes that everybody has an installation of VirtualBox in place. If not, go ahead and stop the video, get yourself a download of VirtualBox and install it, and then go get yourself the extension pack and install that. Since the CSI Linux images are updated over time, the download file version may differ from what is in the lab. Regardless, it remains the same file but with significant revisions. You're next going to point your browser to csilinux.com, and from there you're going to click on the downloads page, and from there you're going to scroll on down until you come to the option to download CSI Linux. Take note that the username and the default password for CSI Linux is CSI, all lowercase. You next scroll on down until you come to the virtual appliance for VirtualBox, and in here you have three options. You can do a direct download, a torrent file, or a magnet link. I recommend doing the direct download, as that will ensure most likely that you're going to get a complete uncorrupted download. You click on the direct download link, and from here you can save the file to wherever you want. Just make sure you remember where you saved it to. CSI Linux downloads as a 7-zip archive. You will need the 7-zip archive utility. It is free, it is open source. You will need to have that installed before you can extract the contents of your download. You'll need to point your browser to 7-zip.org/download. From there, you pick the download that corresponds with the operating system you currently have installed. Go ahead and install it. Once you have 7-zip installed, you can right-click on any file or folder, and you'll see that you have 7-zip now installed into the context menu of your mouse. Once CSI Linux has completed downloading, go ahead and find the archive inside of your download location. Once you have located the download location for your archive of CSI Linux, go ahead and right-click on it, and from the context menu you're going to select 7-zip, and from the next context menu you're going to select Extract Here. Once the extraction is complete, you will have an extracted folder at the same location as where you saved the archived download for CSI Linux. Go ahead and find that folder and double-click it. Inside you're going to find two files. One is a VBox and the other one is a VMDK. Now, to begin the importation of CSI Linux into VirtualBox, all we have to do is just double-click the file with the extension VBox. Go ahead and double-click, and immediately the image for CSI Linux is imported into the VirtualBox Manager. To launch CSI Linux, from the left window pane, find your virtual machine and just double-click it. The machine begins to boot up. Let it roll on. At the login screen, you just type in CSI, all lowercase. Hit enter. You're immediately presented with the desktop for CSI Linux. The next thing you want to do is go ahead and update this installation to get the full package. To do this, we go down to the bottom taskbar. We're going to launch a terminal. At the terminal, you type in power up, all one word, and hit enter. You're now going to be prompted for your CSI password, which is CSI, all lowercase. Hit OK, and the update process begins. There will come a time when the power up command stops working. That is your indicator that your installation of CSI Linux has a new version, and you're going to have to download the new version so that you can again use the power up command to perform an update. To see all the tools that are available up inside of your installation of CSI Linux, go up here to the top left and click on the icon that says Linux. From here you get a pop-down menu, and inside here you will have a subfolder that contains a large number of tools for each of the different areas of digital forensics. Even though they appear inside of this context menu, that does not mean they are installed. For instance, if we scroll on down to malware analysis and we click on Ghidra, all you're going to get is a command prompt. That's telling you that Ghidra was not found because it's not installed, and you're going to have to figure out a way to install Ghidra onto this installation. You will also find that in some instances inside of these subfolders, if you click on one of the applications, in this case let's click on VirtualBox, CSI Linux will begin the installation of VirtualBox for you. Let's go ahead and do that real quick. You see it wants your password. Go ahead and type in your CSI password. Click OK. And it begins the install of VirtualBox. If you are interested in learning more about how to use CSI Linux as a digital forensics expert, you can go back over to CSI Linux and click on the link for the Academy. Here you can get a number of free courses and a number of free labs to help take you through the process of learning about the tools up inside of your CSI Linux installation. So the last thing we're going to talk about is creating a snapshot of your current installation. Now we have updated CSI Linux, and so we can create a snapshot of this machine of this point in time in case we need to roll back because of corruption later on. Now to do this, you just go up here to Machine, and you're going to select from the context menu, Take Snapshot. Give your snapshot a user-friendly name. I labeled mine CSI Linux Updated. Go ahead and click OK. And the snapshot process begins. Now this is a snapshot of the machine at this point in time. If you find that your machine or this installation of CSI Linux becomes corrupted, you can go back into VirtualBox and you can click on the install of your CSI Linux, and you'll find that the restore button will be made available to you. To restore this operating system back to its previous state, the machine must be turned off, and that is when the restore option will be made available to you. And that's going to conclude this short video presentation on how we go about creating a virtual install of CSI Linux using VirtualBox. If you have any questions or concerns about anything that was shown to you in this short presentation, please don't hesitate to reach out, contact your instructor, and I'll see you in my next video.